thank you guys so much for joining me for another video. Today I am going over an NFL draft review. I'm going to look at every single team. I'm going to be looking at all of the class as a whole, giving every team a grade as well. I'm also going to show you guys who my favorite player pick was for each team. After deep diving a ton of player values, I feel like I have a pretty good idea which teams ended up hitting the nail on the head and who ended up reaching, maybe making some picks that did not exactly fit what I viewed as a team need. If it is your first time visiting Relentless Press, welcome. Thank you guys so much for spending some time today. Please consider dropping a like on the video, subscribing to the channel. Both of those things help me out so very much. We are well on our way to our first 1,000 subscribers. You can be a part of that by clicking the button if you have not already. If you have not checked it out yet, I just did a 4-part series for fantasy football MVPs. Those are players that outperform their draft position at the beginning of the season and helped to win you your leagues. I also did the flip side of that, fantasy football busts, guys that heavily underperformed the premium picks that we spent on them in the off season and who probably cost us a playoff spot, or worst case scenario, a championship. Go ahead and check those out if you have not already. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends in both of those categories. With that all said, done, and out of the way, let's hop into it. I am going to go by division, makes it easy for you guys to be able to search your particular teams. I'm also going to try to get timestamps on this video, but we're starting in the NFC and in the East, and one of my favorite teams is going to be where we kick it off. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. They were able to execute an excellent game plan. They continue to stock up on former national champion Georgia Bulldogs on the defensive side of the ball. That makes 4 of them that they've drafted in the last 2 years. Both first-round picks in Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith were steals at their respective draft positions. Carter went number 9 overall. He could have been the number 1 overall prospect when we talk about talent, off-field issues aside. And then Nolan Smith, to be able to get him all the way down at number 30 was awesome. The transition, I think, for both of these guys should be pretty seamless. The fit is absolutely perfect. Getting depth along the offensive line and in the secondary were both needs for Philadelphia, and that trade for DeAndre Swift was the cherry on top of the class. They had one of the best draft weekends of any team in the NFL. As I said, loved what they did start to finish. That should allow them to remain one of, if not the team to beat in the NFC. I give them an A+. Number 2 team we're looking at are the New York Football Giants. They had some good picks early on, and getting that corner Deonte Banks fall to them at number 24 was massive. Not only was it a value pick there, but it was a position of need as well. When you can check both of those boxes in the same pick, you are hitting a home run. Same goes in the second round for John Michael Schmitz. He was the consensus top center available, so for the Giants to be able to get him as well was great for them. I think my biggest gripe I'm going to give about New York was waiting on a wide receiver. Not that Jalen Hyatt was a bad prospect. I think he is at least decent, but he is not likely to make a big time impact early on for this team, and that is what they needed. I do understand there was 4 wideouts taken in a row from 20 to 23 right in front of them, and it probably threw them off. But another playmaker for Daniel Jones should have been more a priority. The Giants desperately needed it, so because of that, I knock them a little bit, but they still get a B+. Up next in the NFC East are the Dallas Cowboys. They needed a bunch of help up front stopping the run. Their biggest weakness by far on the defensive side of the ball in 2022. They were able to get that with 325-pound Mozzie Smith out of Michigan. He is going to provide immediate support to a defense that needed it and was gashed repeatedly far too often last season. The Cowboys needed help at tight end as well after Dalton Schultz left in free agency. I am not sure they took the best player available in the second round there, but they hit the need, and that was big for them. Finally, the last thing I have to touch on for the Cowboys, while it is a great story, and I understand that, no disrespect here, but taking a 5'5" running back flat out seems like a wasted pick for me. This was not a horrible class for Dallas, but it certainly was not one of my favorites. They get a B-. The last team in the East are the Washington Commanders. They were able to cross out most of their needs. Always what you're looking to do. However, the biggest need that I saw that they had is going to remain that way. That's at quarterback. You can call me a skeptic, but I am not buying that either Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett is the long-term answer in Washington. If they didn't love Will Levis, who fell to them, or Hendon Hooker, who also dropped to the third round, I do understand it. You're not going to go and draft a quarterback just because there is one falling. If he's not your guy, he's not your guy. But I still feel like it is a missed opportunity for the Commanders, one where they could have at least taken a shot. If either of those quarterbacks, or heaven forbid, both of them end up working out, Washington is going to be kicking themselves. Commanders got help in the secondary. They also did along the offensive line. So overall, I still like their picks, and they earn a B. Now to the NFC West, we're going to start with the Los Angeles Rams. They started this draft off behind the 8 ball because of past trades. We know that they have been wheeling and dealing for a very long time in LA. They did not have a first rounder, but they still did all right. But it seems far too many reaches were made by this team when we dig into player rankings. The Rams were able to get value in their first 2 picks. But after that, they were the first team to draft a player outside of the top 200, at least according to Mel Kiper's big board. And while we can debate to the ends of the earth the accuracy of Mel being a team to draft the first guy out of the top 200 and doing that at the 89th spot is not a good look. With 4 fifth-rounders available, there were opportunities to get a steal or two for players that dropped for this team, but I'm not sure LA was able to do that either. And to be honest, this looks like a rocky start to the rebuild for the Rams. I give them a C+. The Seattle Seahawks are the next team that we are looking at. They came into this draft armed to the teeth after fleecing the Denver Broncos in the Russell Wilson trade last year. Now, initially, I thought quarterback might be in play for them at number 5, and I might have been in the minority on that, but I felt like if they could get a developmental prospect there to sit behind Geno, it would have worked well. Regardless, did not happen that way. I still think that they nailed their first 2 picks based on how the board fell. They pivoted to draft the top corner in this class, and it was an awesome not only value, but fit as far as need for the Seahawks. They were also able to get one of the best wideouts available, so Seattle did well early. My biggest issue is that in the second round, Seattle decides to take a running back. Zach Charbonnet may be a solid player, and I'm not trying to ding him without even seeing him in an NFL field. But the Hawks just drafted a second round back last season. Kenneth Walker, you might have heard of him. He did pretty solid. So I just do not get investing that type of capital into that position once again. If you've been watching me long, you know that I do not like that type of wasted capital on the running back position. It's the most replaceable position in all of football, so I cannot give Seattle a pass here. They may have crushed it elsewhere, but the Hawks get dinged for double dipping at a position that they probably should have avoided altogether. And because of that, they fall to a B- for 2023's draft. Up next in the NFC West are the San Francisco 49ers, who unlike Seattle did not have a whole lot to work with coming in after trading away their first and second round picks to acquire Run CMC and the Trey Lance aftermath as well. They did have 3 third-rounders to at least ease that pain a little bit. They were able to find value at safety with their first pick. That was a monster win in an otherwise underwhelming class. My biggest problem here was that for whatever reason, the Niners thought that spending their second pick that they had available on a punter was a good call. Really, there is no coming back from that, and the San Francisco 49ers get a C from me. The Arizona Cardinals are the last team in the West. They confused me a little bit in the first round. I like them trading back with Houston and being able to get the capital that they did. Getting an extra first and a third in 2024 was huge for them. But then to trade back up to 6, to draft an offensive tackle no less, as good as Johnson was just not a move that I personally would have made, mostly because tackle was not high on the priority list going into the draft. Still, Arizona crossed out a bunch of needs. They stockpiled picks for the future as well, premium ones at that. They also got a ton of value in the middle rounds as the cherry on top, so Arizona earns an A-. Now to the NFC North, we will start with my Minnesota Vikings, who were short on picks and without a second rounder after trading for TJ Hawkinson last season. That made it absolutely vital that every pick they make was a good one, and for the most part, I think they did that. I got to admit, I was terrified as the draft was unfolding that Will Levis was going to be the pick for the Vikings at 23. He just was not my guy, but I love what the Vikings ended up being able to do. They took a top 3 receiver from the class to help complement Justin Jet Jefferson. Jordan Addison is versatile enough to line up all over the field. He will make life even harder on defenses trying to stop the best wideout in the league. And while I don't love the Jaren Hall pick, getting a top 100 prospect in the 7th round at running back certainly makes up for it, and even more so if the Vikings end up moving on from Dalvin Cook. And with that, I give them a B for the overall class. Next to the Cheeseheads in Green Bay, the Packers, they had extra ammunition after trading away Aaron Rodgers, and they actually used it for once, imagine that, to go and get their quarterback some help. However, it was not in the first round, of course. Packers do not do that. They much rather would reach for a defensive end, but the Packers were able to get help with the next 3 picks, 2 tight ends, and a wide receiver. It's not exactly how I would have done it, but you cannot knock the Pack for at least trying to take some pressure off of Jordan Love. Now, they also did not get any help at the outside linebacker position, and at least they needed some depth there, so that was a miss. But overall, the Packers did not completely screw the pooch because they had so many bites at the apple. I will give them a B as well. The Chicago Bears are up next. They had the 9th overall pick headed into the draft after trading back with Carolina and siphoning way too much value out of them if you're a Panthers fan. Now, they did hit a home run in the first after trading back, so they got even more value like they needed that in Chicago. Thanks, Carolina. But I did love the Darnell Wright pick. Perfect mixture of value and need. Now, the Bears were desperate for help along the defensive line, and because of that, I think Chicago probably reached for both of their mid-round defensive ends. But it's hard to blame them for at least trying to build through the trenches because they needed help stopping the run yesterday. The Bears focused on defense for the majority of their picks. That was wise, and I think Ryan Poles, new GM there, just might be onto something. The Bears receive a B+ for me, as much as it hurts. On to the Detroit Lions. The Lions. They just cannot help themselves, can they? Detroit made a great move to start the draft. They traded back to get some extra selections with Arizona. However, that good quickly turned bad when Detroit chose not to get the first best running back available on the board. No, because Bijan Robinson already had gone to Atlanta at number 8. Instead, they took the second running back at the 12th spot, which just makes 0 sense. When the player that you draft is visibly shocked because he thought his number wasn't going to be called for another 30 picks or so. That is not a good look. Detroit then doubled down and reached once again at that 18 spot, and they reached on Jack Campbell, the inside linebacker. He probably would have been available to them in the second round. The Lions tried to save their weekend by taking some solid value picks in the middle rounds, including one that I liked a lot, Hendon Hooker, all the way at pick number 68. However, the damage had already been done. Maybe next year, kittens. The Lions earn a C-. Now on to the NFC South. We start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who needed some depth up front. They were able to get it on both sides of the ball with their first 2 picks. Kalijah Kancey and Cody Mock were solid pieces. Each of these guys should also make immediate impacts for this team, something that the Bucs needed desperately. I would have loved to see them use a mid-round selection on another offensive lineman instead of hammering the linebacker position. I think that was the biggest weakness of this class for Tampa Bay. Not taking a running back or a safety at all was questionable because they had holes to fill at both sides, but the value that Tampa Bay was able to pull keeps them from sinking into the C range. They earn a B-. New Orleans Saints are up next. They did not originally have a first rounder after trading it away last season, but then Denver went and picked up Sean Payton, and that gave them the 29th pick in the draft. That earned them Brian Breesy, which was a solid pick, but that was about where the good ends, as far as I'm concerned, for the Saints. Their second and third round picks were both without value, and they did not address a gaping need at tight end at all. I also thought that the wideout position could have been addressed by this team, but New Orleans felt differently. They waited for their last pick, number 195, to pull the trigger on a pass catcher. For a team that had one of the least potent passing attacks in 2022, that's a big L, and it earns the Saints a C. Carolina Panthers are up next. I'm going to start with this. I think the Panthers got fleeced when they moved up to number 1 to take their quarterback of the future. I get you have to give up a lot to go and get that pick. I just did not like the move for the Panthers. And I also think that CJ Stroud was the best quarterback in the class. He would have been personally my pick. Now, I do love Bryce Young. Do not get me twisted. I just do not know if he's big enough to survive in the NFL. He's 2 inches shorter than Drew Brees. He weighs just over 200 pounds. Call me crazy, but that worries me. Now, that being said, if he can survive, he has superstar traits. He's an excellent leader, he can make all the throws, and he's also a perfect fit in Frank Wright's system. Really, that is what this class is going to come down to for Carolina. If Young can become the future, then regardless of what I think about the value, the trade was worth it. But if not, the Panthers are going to be rebuilding for a very long time. I give them a B- here. The Atlanta Falcons are up next, and for whatever reason, they seem determined to battle it out near the bottom of the division and potentially the NFL in 2023. I understand the pull of a top playmaker. Really, I do. They're flashy. It's a sexy pick that gets the fans excited. But to spend the number 8 pick on a running back with all of the holes on Atlanta's roster is borderline malpractice. For this team, so many other players made sense at that spot. Tyler Algier may not be elite, but he was plenty good enough last year as a rookie. If they didn't love anyone else at that 8 spot, trading back was certainly in the cards. That would have helped them recoup some capital as well. Just a thought, Atlanta. The second round pick was solid. It should help keep apparent quarterback of the future, Desmond Ridder, upright. The Falcons desperately needed some help at wideout as well, somebody to help Kyle Pitts and Drake London, but no pass catcher was selected, even as a flyer late. So all in all, this draft just feels like a wasted opportunity, and because of that, it is a C- for the Falcons. With the NFC done and out of the way, I'm gonna take a breath and remind you guys, if you are enjoying the content, please crush the like button, subscribe to the channel as well, keep Relentless Press moving forward. And now let's hop into the AFC East, where we start with the Buffalo Bills, who got the best pass catching tight end in the class when they traded up 2 spots to select Dalton Kincaid. I love the player here, but I don't necessarily think it was the best choice as far as spending resources, because the Bills already have Dawson Knox on the roster, so this felt like a luxury pick for a team that could have really used a corner instead. Now, that being said, getting Josh Allen extra weapons is never a bad call. The Bills were short on picks, so they were not able to knock out all of their needs. But Osiris Torrance and Dorian Williams were good values in the 2nd and the 3rd rounds. So overall, I have to say this class is a win, and the Bills earn a B because of it. To Miami, where the Dolphins came in with the fewest picks of any team in the league. They had just 4 total, and that included none in the 1st, 4th, or 5th rounds. That meant it was crucial that they make the most out of each and every one of those, but unfortunately, I'm not sure that they can check that box. Cam Smith was a solid pick in the 2nd, but I cannot understand the move in the 3rd for Devon Achane. Not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but we're gonna go with it. Miami has had a bad habit for at least a couple years now of going after every running back with a pulse, so using what little draft capital that they had here to get another rusher was just a poor choice. Dolphins were in need of some linebacker help pretty much everywhere. One guy would have been great, but they failed to draft that for some added depth. There are not a ton of holes for Miami, but they failed to solidify their roster, and I do give them a C- because of that. To New England, where we look at the Patriots, they were sent a gift when they not only were able to trade down and acquire more draft capital, but they were able to do that and then still get an excellent player at a premium position. Christian Gonzalez was without a doubt one of the top 2 corners available in this draft, and it was also the biggest position of need for the Pats, so I have to love not only the move to go and get him, but the fit in the system. With 12 total picks when all was said and done, New England covered pretty much every hole they had to, besides maybe the most important one, and that was getting more pass catching help from Mac Jones. The Patriots did spend a pair of 6th rounders on wideout, but that almost seems like a slap in the face when you consider the lack of high-end options at playmaker for this roster. We know the ineptitude in drafting the position for Bill Belichick and company, so I suppose you can't knock them too much. They probably just figured they can't miss again if they don't take the shot, and because of that, I'm giving the Patriots a solid B for this draft class. Next in the AFC East, we are looking at the New York Jets. They still had plenty of ammunition after the Aaron Rodgers trade, and I like the moves that they made to continue to build on a fairly complete roster. Getting Will McDonald in the 1st was a great pivot after 4 offensive tackles were already off of the board. I could have seen this team reach in the past to lock down that position of need, but they made the right call with the outside linebacker out of Iowa State. Now, getting some more beef on the defensive line would have been nice, but that's really my only gripe about what Gang Green did, and because of that, I am giving them a B. To the AFC West, we'll start with the Denver Broncos, who were without their 1st round pick after getting taken behind the shed to acquire the shell of Russell Wilson last year. So making every pick in 2023 count was a high priority, and that makes the pick of Marvin Mims Jr. at the tail end of round 2 questionable at best. Denver has invested heavily at pass catcher over the last couple of years, and going back to that well yet again with other more pressing needs did not make a bunch of sense to me. Waiting until the 7th round to address arguably the biggest need for this team at center was not my favorite move either, but elsewhere at least the Broncos were able to pick up some decent value. A mediocre start for Sean Payton's comeback tour. Without a doubt, I give the Broncos a C-. B+. To Kansas City, where the Chiefs did an excellent job of understanding team needs and addressing them. I would have loved for them to take advantage of a great tight end class and start to plan for life after Travis Kelce. But since he is still drinking from his own personal fountain of youth, the move to replace Frank Clark instead made a ton of sense. Rashee Rice will have every opportunity to earn snaps at wideout after Juju Smith-Schuster left to New England, so I like the focus on getting Patty Mahomes another weapon. Kansas City did reach a little in the later rounds, but they made up for that by crushing it early. I give them a B. The Los Angeles Chargers are up next. They were able to start with some more help for Justin Herbert, which was exactly what the doctor ordered after both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams both missed time last year. My only problem with who they went with was that instead of complementing Mike Williams' size with some speed, they went with Quentin Johnson, who is more or less a clone of what Big Mike brings to the table. After dishing out massive money to Williams last year, I would argue, and did argue last year, far too much, Johnson would not have been my choice as far as team fit. LA was another team I thought could have taken advantage at tight end. Instead, they completely ignored that need. They did beef up at linebacker. I liked that. And by not drafting a running back, it seems that Austin Eckler may at least have one more year in powder blue. This is a class that I liked but did not love. I give them a B. On to Las Vegas, where we look at the Raiders. They can always be counted on at this point to muck things up one way or another, and they did not fail to disappoint in 2023. The Tyree Wilson pick was not a bad one. It just wasn't the right one with Christian Gonzalez still on the board. The Raiders needed help at corner in the worst way, and they still passed on the elite prospect that was just begging to be taken. In the second round, Vegas redeemed themselves by finding a replacement for Darren Waller. Michael Mayer will slide right in and try to fill the gaping hole that he left behind. Unfortunately, that is about where the good ends. Starting the day with 12 picks and leaving it with just 9 is not always a bad thing. But when you are reaching or not checking off needs, it is a wasted opportunity. And that is exactly how I felt that this draft went after Mayer was taken. I give the Raiders a C+. With 2 more divisions to go, we go to the AFC North and start with Cincinnati. They did a good job of hitting most of their needs, with the lone exception being the hesitancy to pull the trigger on, you guessed it, a much needed tight end. I feel like a broken record at this point, but Cincy was another team that could have taken advantage of this historic tight end class and instead passed on the position altogether. And in a league where tight ends are becoming increasingly more important, especially in the passing game, I just do not understand it. Miles Murphy in the first was solid. Teams can never have too many pass rushers, so I like the pick, but I still feel like it had shades of being a luxury pick that could have been better invested. The middle rounds were about filling out an excellent roster and getting value, so well done by the Bengals there. And Chase Brown in the 5th was a great get and helped provide insurance behind Joe Mixon. This was a solid but not spectacular class for the Bengals. They get a B from me. Pittsburgh Steelers are the next team in the North that we're looking at. They were aggressive, moving up in the 1st to get a top offensive tackle, and they only had to give up a 4th round pick to make that happen, which is fantastic value, and it also hits a need, so that's about as good as it gets. The Steelers then filled another major hole by taking Joey Porter Jr. in the 2nd. The 6'2" corner falls into one of the best positions that he could have, as he now gets to learn from savvy vet and ex-Minnesota Viking Patrick Peterson. Pitt did not have a ton of picks late, but they made the most of them by getting depth along the offensive line and also at corner. It was not a perfect draft for the Steelers, but it's definitely among my top 10 favorites, and it could possibly sneak into the top 5. It is a B+ from me. The Baltimore Ravens are up next. They did the best and most important thing they could have when they went and pulled the trigger on Zay Flowers out of Boston College in the 1st. Getting a speedy receiver to pair with overpaid and over-the-hill wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. was a must, and it also gives the Ravens a legit chance at having a true wide receiver one. Baltimore was without a second round pick, but they got excellent value in the third with Trenton Simpson, who was a top 50 prospect on most people's big boards. A lack of defensive tackle in this class was certainly a miss, but outside of that, I think the Ravens did really well with their 6 picks. They get a B+. The Cleveland Browns are the last team in the AFC North. They were hamstrung by not having a pick until number 74 overall after trading their first in that Deshaun Watson deal and their second in the deal to get Elijah Moore. Wide receiver Cedric Tillman adds size out wide, and the Browns certainly needed that, so I do love the fit for them. Cleveland then added depth to both the defensive and offensive lines, and once again, I am a fan of building through the trenches. To still be able to get value at premium positions was a massive win for this franchise. The lack of early picks certainly hurts them, but you could not have asked for much more as a fan when all was said and done. I give the Browns a B. To the AFC South, we're going to start with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were wheeling and dealing on Thursday night. They ended up moving down 3 spots and ended up recouping an extra 4th, 5th, and 6th rounder. It was a great start, which got even better when Anton Harrison was still available to them with the 27th pick. Getting extra protection for your franchise quarterback is always a good call. Jacksonville then got both blocking and potentially pass catching help in the second with tight end Brenton Strange checking another need off of the list while also supporting Trevor Lawrence. My least favorite pick, however, came next as running back Tank Bigsby not only was an unnecessary luxury pick for this team, but also potentially a reach as well. With 13 picks overall, the Jags hit everything that I would have besides giving more attention to a corner group that needed some juice, and had they forgot about that running back pick in the third and went with a defensive back instead, the Jags could have gotten an A out of me. Instead, they will settle for a B. Tennessee is up next. The Titans are going to be judged by how Will Levis develops and what exactly he becomes. If Levis is able to adapt quickly and become a solid starter, the Titans absolutely killed this class. However, if he busts, there's going to be massive fallout because of the capital it took to go and get him. Tennessee gave up the 41st, 72nd, and 3rd rounder next year to move up just 8 spots and draft the quarterback out of Kentucky. The cost was way too steep, but if Levis hits, it will not matter. Getting the quarterback a pair of tackles, including potentially the best one available, was a great move, and planning for life after Derrick Henry was also a wise decision. I would have loved for them to get a higher pedigree wide receiver, but that is the only place that I can really ding the Titans, so I give them a B+. The Indianapolis Colts are up next. They did not panic, and they were still able to get their quarterback. Anthony Richardson has a ton of upside, but he is certainly raw. I like his fit in Indy. I talked about it a little bit. I think Seattle at 5 would have been ideal that year to learn behind Geno Smith, but that was not to be. Going and getting Josh Downs in the 3rd was a good buy, and alongside Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor, Richardson's now going to have a trio of playmakers. They're going to help ease the transition for him if he does end up starting. The Colts clearly understood their holes in the roster, and they worked to get them filled as efficiently as possible. Now, having 12 picks easily helps that out, but Indianapolis got value and hit needs repeatedly, so they came away as winners. I give them an A-. The last team we are looking at in the draft review are the Houston Texans. They got my dude coming into the draft, that is CJ Stroud. I love the move to take him at 2 and give their franchise a chance at someone to build around. Now, that was the expected. Then Houston went and got all starry-eyed with shades of Bill O'Brien and paid big time to move from 12 down to number 3 and take the draft's top edge rusher in Will Anderson Jr. Now, I do love the player, but the value to get him just does not add up. The Texans surrendered the number 12 and the number 33 pick, plus next year's 1st and 3rd to get the number 3 and the 105. Yikes. If Anderson does not become a perennial All-Pro, this is an absolute hose job for Arizona. Houston then went and reached in the second round, but I did like them go out and take a few receivers for a room that desperately needed some competition. Overall, it is a mixed bag for me, but I have to at least give them credit for being aggressive to go and get their guys. I will give them a B-. And with that, we will call it a day. Really hope you guys enjoyed the content, and I hope you learned something. I would love to hear about your guys' favorite picks and who you thought had the best classes from this draft. So drop your comments below, get the conversation started. I absolutely love the engagement. It is the reason I do these videos, so hit me up and let's have a discussion. Make sure you like the video if you enjoy the content today and subscribe to the channel as well. That helps me out a bunch and I am so very thankful for it. To all of my current subscribers out there, I really appreciate you guys, the support you've given me over the years. Let's keep moving forward together. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abraham Opats, and I will see you next time.